So I am doing my mid-month wrap-up. So I have been lately, I said it in my last wrap-up that I've been wanting to read. I've been reading less and watching more TV shows or movies, things like that. So the first book that I got through this month, this is Lena Hendricks. This is Just This Once. This is The Kings. Though I will say, because this is a series, you probably should start with this other series first, because there's ones that is the Sullivan series, and then this one is the Kings series. So the Sullivans and the Kings are like families that don't get along with each other, and so they have this like rivalry. So with this one here, we've got Emily Ward and William Whip King. Now this is a one-night stand firefighter, fire chief's stepdaughter. His nickname for her is Prem. You know, kind of like basically like, there's a part in here where he kind of like has this a little bit animosity toward her. So he kind of like thinks she's like more of like a princess and things like that, you know, like, so he uses it as a way of like, he first used it as a way of like getting back at her, but then, he would use it, then he started like using it as more of like a term of endearment for her. So Emily Ward moves to the small Michigan town called Outta Towner, what a name, where her parents moved to a few years ago. Her stepfather is the fire chief there. Her mother decides to set her up on blind dates, and that turn into duds. You know, a lot of these blind dates are. After a disastrous blind date, Emily decides to go to a local store. And while she's drowning her sorrows away in chocolatey goodness, she gets caught by the local hottie she saw in the local tattoo shop. Like when she was walking to, I'd say it's like a convenience store, you know, like whatever the small local store is. As she was walking there, she saw like the back end of the hottie, you know, the guy who's good looking. She saw his ass, and I'm like, okay, you know, it's a lot of it is a lot of certain authors, like a lot of it tends to be very lust based, like at first, where you're like, oh, you notice this person's body, but you don't notice their face or their personality or, you know, something like that. Like I can look at somebody and be like, yeah, he's good looking, but if he speaks and he's a dumbass, then, you know, his good looking factor just kind of tanks, you know? So, he, I guess, noticed her as she was like heading over to the convenience store area. So he basically followed her in. And so he sees her, you know, walking, you know, in this one aisle, like sitting there, you know, eating chocolate. And so she's like telling him like, oh, I'm going to pay for it. You know, I'm going to pay for it. And so he's like, oh, you know, that's not what I'm worried about, you know. So he sits down with her and they start eating the candy. And then, you know, they decide to head out and, you know, obviously walk around the town and stuff like that, because she's more, you know, newer to the area and everything. So they don't really know each other's like names and everything, you know. Plus also her name is different than her stepfather's name. So even if she told him her name, like it's not going to be the stepfather's, you know, name. So Whip notices Emily on the floor of their local store eating chocolate, so he decides to join her. They hit it off and they decide to get out of there and walk the neighborhood. One thing leads to another, and he takes her back to his place and they have a one-night stand. Unfortunately, Emily gets out of his place too quick before he can ask for her number. Oh yeah, that's right. I was discussing this one I was thinking to myself, did I already talk about this book? But no, I was discussing it in my last wrap up. I hadn't finished it yet. But yeah, I had said in the other video before where I thought it was funny because once she finds out that he's a firefighter and her stepdad is the police, the fire chief, not police. I want to say police chief, fire chief. And once she sees that, she's like, oh no. She's like, this guy works for my dad, So she's like, oh shit. And she gets out of there, she kind of gives him a high five, like, hey, good time. And, she leaves. So I thought that was funny. So kind of like weeks go by and they see each other again. And then he ends up noticing, oh, that's, the chief's daughter, So days go by, they run into each other again. Once Whip finds out that Emily is his chief's daughter, he tries his best to stay away from her, but their attraction is too strong and they decide to keep their relationship secret. Because, obviously they're attracted to each other. And there was like a little bit of animosity toward them. Like once they find out who each other are, they almost kind of like had this little bit of like hate toward each other, which it wasn't really hate. Obviously they're still attracted to each other. It was more of like dislike, where it's like, oh, you're a firefighter. And it was mainly because she wanted to stay away from firefighters because, well, one, because her dad's a fire chief, but also because her father had kind of told her that all those guys that are like involved in like firefighters, a lot of them tend to be playboys and they kind of like, go from girl to girl and all that stuff. Or some of the guys that are married end up cheating and all that stuff. I'm assuming it might be the same way when it comes to the police, because you're working in, I think maybe because it's a high stress type of job. And so you constantly have dangers, like police constantly have that danger of like, they could get shot, they can get killed by a suspect, so they tend to be more, in anxiety, you have this like, where you're confident, you have your gun, but still someone can kind of get the drop on you and everything like that. So, there's that type of thing. So maybe the fact of they have more high risk jobs, they, kind of like try to live as much as they can because they know like any minute something could happen. Same thing with like firefighters. Even though I don't agree with cheating, I would just say like if you're in that type of job and you don't think you can be monogamous, don't get married, don't get married. Don't get in a relationship, just stay single if that's the case, So, when it came to Whip, he goes by, his name is William, but he goes by Whip. He, of course, he likes being a firefighter, but he has other passions. Like, he has other things that he likes to do. Like, he gets kind of like antsy when he's home for how many days. So he does woodworking and he works with his hands and he creates like furniture and different things like that. I think it's really cool. I thought that was really interesting. And his father is like this high-rising dude in the town where he kind of like is basically running the town and stuff. And there was in this one here, there was a bit of a mystery where at the beginning we hear that the king's, the children's, I think it's like 2 girls and like a few boys. I think there's like 5 or 6 kids in the King family. They end up hearing like when they were younger that their mother had like walked away and like, oh, she left, but all of a sudden, like in this book, Whip is discovering that, well, his mother left her favorite jean jacket behind. She also left a ring behind that was important to her. She left her driver's license. So it's like, if somebody leaves, they're going to take those things with them, So besides like the relationship between Whip and Emily, them kind of like getting hot and heavy and stuff, but you also have this mystery behind it of like, hey, did something happen to their mother. Did their father have anything to do with it? You know? So there was that kind of mystery. And I liked that aspect to it. There was a little bit of a mystery going on. So I said, I'm a big fan of small town romances. I said, this one hit the spot. I said, also, I really enjoyed the other storyline in here. We have a family rivalry between the King family, Whip's family, and the Sullivans. I didn't realize that there is a connecting series to this one called The Sullivans, where the two families play pranks on each other. I said, also, there's another storyline in here with the King children not getting along with their controlling father and the mystery of their mother leaving years ago. And like I said, if you want to get into this series, I would say probably it'd be better to start off with the Sullivans, because at least you'll know more of the backstory of the Sullivans and everything, and the rivalry and everything like that. I delved into this one and I was like, oof, I maybe should have delved into the Sullivans one first. I didn't realize that. And go from there. So I said, I enjoyed the easy relationship with Whip and Emily. They fall for each other fast, and I appreciated that when they had a complication in their relationship, they handled it like adults. I said, sometimes third act breakups / separations can be really stupid, but this one felt more real world of what could happen in relationships, so I appreciated that. It was a sweet romance and good start to a series. I will say the third act kind of separation, which almost was a separation, not quite. It had to do with like her job, which I'm like, that makes total sense. So she had moved to this town, this small town, and she was essentially a, what they call a, oh God, my brain just, substitute teacher. That's what it is. Substitute teacher. And so, she's subbing as a teacher because the one teacher went on like maternity leave. And so she was there to, you know, obviously take over the role for a short time, you know, obviously. And so while she's doing it, you know, she's trying to do her job as a teacher, where she notices this boy has bruises on him. So she makes the assumption, because the father ended up reporting her because she ended up buying the little boy shoes. She ended up buying shoes for the little boy, which I'm like, I can understand where she's coming from, because you see this little boy in these beat up shoes that have holes in them. I want to confront the parents and say, what the fuck is wrong with you that you can't go and make sure your kid has shoes? I don't care if you're in fucking rags. Get your kid some freaking shoes, you know? And if you need help, ask for help, you know? Especially when we live in a small town, sometimes people, you know, your neighbors will be willing to help you out. Maybe they have a kid around the same age as your kid, and they have extra shoes that, you know, they're going to give to the Goodwill or something like that, you know? There you go. That type of thing. So I didn't understand the parents and why their kid was in holes. And then when, you know, holes for shoes. And then when the teacher's like, oh, she's going to give him some new shoes, they're like, oh, we can't accept that. Stop being fucking prideful. I hate that type of attitude where it's like, oh, I don't want to accept charity. Yeah, but your kid's in fucking rags. You know, so I don't know, nut up or shut up. I just get so annoyed with it, where it's like, oh, if you don't want to accept charity, then I don't know, get more money coming into your freaking household. If the woman's not working, get her fucking working a job, you know? Find a secondary job. I don't know, do something. But the fact that you go and you have your kid in holy shoes just really pisses me off. So for me, I will have my kids in clothes that, you know, may not be super expensive, but they're clean. You know, I launder them, you know, they get cleaned. You know, they don't have holes in them. They don't look like, you know, they don't look dirty. All this stuff. You know, I will be in rags before I see my children in rags. You know, so it just, To me, I'm like, fuck your pride. I don't give a shit about your fucking pride. Your kid is in holy shoes, you know? Children make fun of other kids. They're like, oh, look at your shoes. Your shoes look like crap. Kids do that. So you want your child mocked and teased because you're too prideful? Yeah, I hate that. I hate that attitude. You know, like, I understand, like, not being that type of person where you constantly are asking people for help. Or like, oh, I need this, I need that. Oh, I need another GoFundMe for this or this. And I'm like, find a fucking better job then, you know? I don't know, find a better job. Have less kids, something. But to go and, like, have children and then you don't properly make sure they have shoes on their feet. You know, like his ex-wife, who's a see you next Tuesday, would have their son come over to the apartment in shoes that had holes in them, in clothes that are too small for him. Because her words, she's afraid she's not going to get the stuff back. Am I going to wear his shoes? He's a little boy. Am I going to wear his shoes? Am I going to wear his fucking clothes? No. So why would you think they're not going to get back to you? You know, I'm going to go and be like, okay, whatever shoes he's wearing when he goes back to his mother, they may be shoes that are the ones that his dad bought him. Okay, then we want to make sure they come back to us. You know, she loved to do it where she always complained about, I'm not sure I'm going to get the stuff back. Meanwhile, you know, my ex would buy him shoes, clothes, and we wouldn't get that shit back. We had to start labeling the shit on the back of his shirt, like where the tag was, to say, like, my ex was the one that bought it. Because she'd be like, you never buy him anything. Excuse me? There's fucking shoes right there he bought. There's fucking clothes right there he bought. Stop acting this fucking stupid, immature game of, like, you never buy him anything. We buy him plenty of stuff. You know? So, that I don't like is when you have idiotic people who do that shit, and they do it out of spite. You know, they want to go and spite the other person, spite the parent. That's immature. That's immature, that's shallow. What the fuck is wrong with you? Seriously. As a parent, that you're going to do that. Make sure the kid has clothes. Even if you don't see them on the kid that often, they're over at the parent's house or whatever it is. As long as they're wearing them, I don't give a shit. So that's the thing that kind of annoyed me with the father in this, where it's like, you're going to have this pride, but this kid's in shoes that have holes in them. So I can understand the concern of the teacher, where she's like, he has holes in his shoes. Then he's coming to school and he's got bruises on him. It looks like this child's being neglected. So I completely understood where she was coming from as a teacher. But she ends up losing her job because she doesn't go to the school board or talk to, like, the other teachers and give their input and saying, hey, he's got bruises on him. You know, like, you got to ask the questions like, is this kid in sports? What kind of sports is he in? Because that's essentially what happened. She ended up finding out that he's in, like, taekwondo or karate or whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, that addresses the bruises of why he might have bruises, but it doesn't address why the fuck is this kid in holy shoes? That still doesn't address that. That never was confronted, you know? So she ends up losing her job in this and has it to where she's now trying to find this job. And the more she looks, the farther out she has to go. And she's like, I'm going to have to go and possibly move to this area of, where were they, in Michigan again, I think? Michigan. I have to go to this other area of Michigan because it's, you know, it'd be too long to, like, drive to. You know, it'd be like 2 hours to get there, 2 hours to get back. It wouldn't make sense for her to continue to live in this town. She'd be better off just finding a place that's close to her work, you know, which most people do. And so she had this thing of, like, him and I are probably going to have to break up and not see each other anymore. And he had this, you know, whip, he was like, he was considering, like, if she does move, I would go with her. Because he's like, I don't want to end this relationship. And so that to me, I was like, that makes sense for like a third act complication. It made sense for that. Where I'm like, yeah, people like break up all the time, like when it comes to like, oh, they have to move for their work or anything like that. Like, we used to have, it was Toyota. We used to have Toyota here in California. And so Toyota ended up moving, I believe they ended up moving to Texas. And so, of course, you know, if you're working that job at Toyota and it's like a big corporation and you're, you know, you're getting paid a good amount of money and all that stuff, it makes sense to go with the job. You know, you're like, yeah, we'll just, you know, move to Texas, you know. And maybe if you don't want to move to Texas, you're like, well, it's either that or I'm out of a job. So for a lot of the people, I'm assuming they probably left just for the fact that it continued to hold their job, you know? So I can understand why Emily had that, you know, like conundrum of like, oh, I'm going to have to move. And that means we're probably going to have to break up because, you know, it's hard to have like long distance relationships and things like that. So that made sense in here of why that was, you know, more of a third act complication and stuff like that. But I did enjoy it. I ended up giving it 5 stars. I will say, like, I tried to get into the second book in the series, Just My Luck. And this one had Sloane Robinson and Abel King. I ended up DNFing this one around 50% because I was not feeling, I said, let me find it. So I said DNF the book around 50% because I wasn't feeling the connection to this couple. It was all surface level where all Abel kept thinking about was Sloane's body. And she kept doing that as well to Abel's big body and his big bink, you know, his peen. I said, I hate that type of shallowness for the couple getting together. It's all just lust-based. And I said, and this woman has children. I said, I felt nothing when I was reading this couple's romance and I couldn't wait for it to be over. I said, I felt like they didn't really know each other before they got into bed with each other. And it was right at the 50% point where the couple did have sex. I said, I don't know. Something just felt off about this story. And that's why I ended up DNFing this book. I said, I seem to be having issues with series lately where I read the first book and it's good. But by the second or third book, the tone of the series feels off. I said, like with the first book, we have the undertone that there is some mystery behind these men's mother's disappearance years ago. I said, I like that aspect to the first book. Where with this one, I said that storyline disappeared completely. And I read up to the 50% point of the book. And I said, and the characters barely talked about that mystery from the first book. I said, it frustrated me because I really want the brothers to figure out if their mother is still alive or if their father had something to do with her disappearance. I said, you have to keep the same similar undertone of a series if you're going to introduce it in the first book of a series. Which, when I compare this one here, this series really reminds me of the Claire Kinsley one that I talked about in my last video. I'll have to show all the books like right here, just to show you what they look like. But with that series, you had the similar thing where you had rival families. These two families didn't like each other. They would play pranks on each other and do different things like that. But there was this overall mystery of why did their families have this rivalry with each other? Why did they have this hate toward each other? And so throughout the series, you see this mystery like unfolding between each book, you know? So I kind of wanted the same thing with this one, where we're delving in and we're like, okay, not only is it going to be a romance, but you're also going to have a mystery too of what happened to this woman, you know? And like I said, in the 50%, up to the 50% of those books that I read for the second one here, up to 50%, there was barely any mention of his mother, you know? And I'm like, hello, you know, what are we doing here? And then she has kids. And I was like, well, you have 2 children. So it's like you need to be leery about who you bring into your children's lives. And she kind of had it to where she didn't want to mention to her children that her and Abel ended up getting married, which was what the trope in here was, like a fake marriage. because she needs money for her grandfather's farmhouse had burned down, and you end up finding out it was due to arson. She suspects her ex-husband of doing it because he wasn't really a great guy, and he, kind of started doing like weird stuff. So she divorced him. And she has twin children that are, they didn't say the age. I'd say maybe they were like possibly elementary age, around there. So she moves to this small town to kind of like get away from her ex, and she didn't ask for child support because he was not the fatherly type. He didn't want anything to do with the kids. And so she didn't ask for child support, which I could understand. But it made it to where it was harder for her to take care of the kids because you're taking care of children. They cost more money, and so she moves to this small town to be by her grandfather. And all of a sudden, her grandfather's farmhouse just burns down. And so now she's like suspecting that maybe it could have been her ex, that could have did it. And it almost gets kind of like almost confirmed to her that it's more and more likely her ex did it, because all of a sudden she sees him in the town again. She sees him in the town, and she's like, she hadn't seen him in a while. And so I'm like, okay, that kind of like ups your suspicions of like, yes, there's a possibility he started the fire, which I don't know why, for the fact that he's not paying child support. She's divorced. Move on with your life and go find another chick that's willing to deal with your ass, especially since he didn't want anything to do with the children. And I'm like, she's out of your hair, so why you got to go after her? That never made sense. And then, like I said, we had it to where she moves in with Abel because the farm, the cabin that they're staying in is, worn down and everything. And so because they had this fake marriage, he's a convict. So he basically needs like money to help him get out of the business dealings with his father. He basically wants to control this bar. It's more of like I'm trying to think of the name of it. It's a brewery. Obviously, you could do beer tastings, things like that there too, and stuff like that. So they brew their own beer and flavors and things like that. So he wants to get out of this contract with his father. He doesn't want his father having control of the business anymore, which I can understand. But in order to get money or get a loan, he has to have better standing. And since he's a convict, it makes things more complicated. He ended up going to jail for 5 years due to an accident. And so he's dealing with that. And then for her, she's dealing with the fact that, she works for the brewery, so she works for him. And she's really struggling financially. And so she's like, well, my father had given me an inheritance, but she'd have to wait till like 35 or something like that, which I don't understand why it would be 35. That's weird. You'd think it'd be like 25 or something like that. But it's 35. She'll wait till she's 35, or she needs to either have another baby or get married. Like if there's like any type of like certain life things that happen, that the money or most of the money could come to her that way. So she decides to ask Abel to marry her, so that way she can get her most of her inheritance. And then she said she could help him with the brewery, of getting the brewery. So like I said, I got about 50% in, and I was like, I'm not feeling this. Like, it definitely feels more lust-based. I'm not feeling the connection with the characters. And then, like I said, then you have the mystery of, like, what happened to their mother. Did their father have something to do with it? And then there's hardly any talk of the mother in this one here. And I was like, that's weird. So I didn't like that. I wasn't feeling it. And I'm like, well, I'll try to delve into the third book in the series and see if maybe it was just that one there. But I noticed lately with series, like, I'll like the first book, but then when I delve into the second or third, I'm like, ugh, I don't like this. You know, I don't like the writing. I don't like the characters. And I'm like, what happened? You know, like, what happened with this author where it's like all of a sudden it's just not working, you know? And it's happened to multiple authors where I delve in the first book, I really enjoy their first book, but then the second book I don't like, and then I try the third book, and the third book I don't like. So, this is why for me, I'm like, series have been a hard thing for me lately. My Siri heard me and, you know, it was assuming I was talking to it. No, I'm not talking to you. So yeah, to me, I was like, I wasn't feeling the book, so that's why I ended up like DNFing it, like 50% in, because I'm just like, I am not feeling this. It feels more lust-based. I'm not feeling the connection with the characters. And then, like I said, the mystery. Where the heck, you know, he wasn't doing any investigating of, like, you know, their mother. I would assume, like, hey, you know, yeah, their little brother is trying to solve this mystery of, like, hey, we can't find mom, you know. Like, even if she changed her name, you'd still be able to figure out where the heck she is, you know. But there's no trace of her. Like, she disappeared off the face of the earth. And I'm like, that's suspicious. So that's why I was like, I'm not feeling it, and I DNF'd it. So I'll try to delve into the third book in that series. But I may end up going to the Sullivans and reading the Sullivan series and see if I can get through that one. We'll see. This might be, that author might be a one and done for me, because sometimes it happens where I like the first book from this author, and then I try to delve into the other books, and I'm just like, I'm not feeling the other books. And I end up just like, no, this is one and done for me. I like the first book, but I don't really care for the other ones. So the next one I ended up reading, this one just came out. This is Service by Claire Kent. This is part of the Central Cities series. Now, this series, it had it to where it's like 40 some years after, I think it was 46 years after what they call the fall. She calls it the fall. But in the other series, in the Kindle series, it was how many years after impact. So essentially, an asteroid had come down to Earth and had decimated, I'd say, most of like Europe and stuff like that, which isn't hard because when you look at Europe, Europe is not very big. So basically decimated Europe and caused like a lot of people getting sick, like the air had ash and different things like that. So a lot of people were getting sick and they were dying. So this is like how many years later where you have like governments forming and different things like that. And of course, sometimes a government can form and the government isn't any good. You know, the government ends up becoming more of what I would probably call a dictatorship, things like that, where they're like, oh, if you go against us, we're going to take you out. Yeah, it sounds more like a dictatorship, you know? So they're dealing with this government faction. And so you have the characters of Annabelle and Ben. Now, we first are introduced, I say it right in here for my content warning. So I said Annabelle and Ben were first introduced in the book Ashes. So you definitely should read that book before this one. The book Ashes is more of a novella base, so it's shorter, quicker. So because it will give more of a backstory into how these characters were first introduced. And I said also you have to read Devotion, which is the first book in this series, the Central Cities one, before this book, because of course it's the first book in the series, and I think you should definitely read the first book before you delve into the second one, especially when it comes to a series. So I also wanted to come in with additional content warning. There's a attempted assassination in here, like several times. murder, and there was like attempted kidnapping. Now, Annabelle and Ben have known each other for about 7 years. They've been best friends, really close together. The only thing they haven't gotten to is they've never kissed, they've never gotten intimate, anything like that. They've never dated, nothing like that. So they were more of like, started out as partners, you know, in this thing of like, hey, we see something happening, we need to help people, you know? So essentially, they are like this outfit that they have kind of like this compound. They keep everybody kind of safe and everything like that. And Ben is pretty much like her right hand, you know, of like, if somebody's trying to get up into her face and intimidate her, Ben's kind of like her muscle, like, hey, back off. You know, you're not intimidating her. She's essentially the boss. And so they kind of run this area to try to keep people safe and also to help take down the government, this government faction that is, you'd say, oppressing the people, you know? Because her sister lives in one of these little towns, like, that are away from the central cities, like not inside the central cities. With the first book of Devotion, that one there had to do with the inside the central city. So you see all the stuff that's going on there, the fucked up shit's going on there. Where this one here is like you're outside of it, you're outside the outside area. You're not into the wilderness area because there's also wilderness area and farmlands that are farther away. So this area is not that far away from central cities, enough to where the government fucks with you. And so she's like, oh, we're going to push back, you know, because F the government kind of thing, which I can understand, especially when you live in an area where it's like they're trying to oppress you. They're trying to keep you from living your life, and they're asking for all this stuff from you, you know. That's not how the government should run, you know. The whole point of like here is the government's supposed to be for the people, us citizens. That's what it's supposed to be for. Where you have other systems in place in other countries, things like that, that are more of like dictatorships, more communism, things like that. You obviously don't want that, you know. You want more of a we work together type of thing. Work with each other, not against each other. So this government basically wants to have it to where it's like, okay, they basically want to oppress their people. They want to, you know, these are people who are in the higher ups and have all these other people suffering, you know, below. And it's like, no, that's not how government or country should run and all that stuff. So she, you know, Annabelle's basically, you know, almost like what you'd call maybe a freedom fighter, things like that, you know, where she's trying to make sure that these people are living the best life they can, you know, without having the government on their ass, you know. I can understand that. So I had wrote down Annabelle and Ben have been working together as a team, trying to keep the people at their compound and other neighboring villages safe. And yeah, there's other neighboring villages that are close by too, as well as taking down the government faction that has been around for years. Annabelle has been the leader and Ben her right-hand man. They have kept their relationship professional, but lately things have changed and soon they get into a sexual relationship. Like they get closer, you know, and you could tell like Ben has had feelings for Annabelle for a long time. But he obviously wanted her to kind of like pursue him rather than him pursuing her, because he knew what it was like she was in this previous marriage, and it was a very controlling marriage, and she lived inside the central cities and all that stuff. And so the first book kind of gives you more of that backstory with, you know, Annabelle and Ben and how, you know, he was basically her bodyguard working for the husband. And Ben finally got to the point where he's like, you know, I'm going to go back to like the wilderness area where my parents are at. And if you read the Kindle series, you end up finding out who the parents are. I'll just say that. Read the Kindle series before you delve into this one, because it tells you a whole backstory. You know, I'm not gonna say who the characters are. I'm just saying, read the books. So they start this sexual relationship where, you know, Annabelle's very much the one that kind of like pushed it. She kissed him, and then he was like, oh, it's go time now, you know, it's go time now. And I'm like, I can understand, you know. They form this, like, you know, bond with each other, and Annabelle's very closed off, which I can understand her reasoning behind her being that way, because of the fact that, you know, she lost her father years ago. Her stepmother was a very nasty woman, and she just wanted to, you know, be in a relationship where somebody's going to be able to financially take care of her. She's going to, or she can be able to take care of herself, you know, and not have to rely on, you know, somebody to take care of her, that type of thing, you know. She was in that situation. She didn't like to be in that area. So when Ben was like, hey, I'm going to go back to the wilderness, you can come with me. And she was like, yep. So she basically was like, told her husband, like, okay, we're divorced. We're done. You know, I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And she actually goes back to the wilderness with him for like a year or so, around there. And he teaches her like how to fish, how to hunt, you know, all that stuff. He teaches her how to take care of herself, how to be self-sufficient, which I was like, good for him, you know, good for him. And so, you know, their feelings for each other, I said, the relationship gets even more complicated when the feelings they have been like suppressing for years about each other kind of like start bubbling up to the surface. And you have like more of a complication because she doesn't want to be, not that she wants to be tied down, but she doesn't want to be at a point where she feels like a man is controlling everything about her. You know, like she wants to be able to be in the fight, you know, like there's plenty of people who, they don't want to fight. You know, they don't want to fight. They don't want to fight in a war. They don't want to fight in like a battle. They don't want to be around violence. So I can understand the people who just, they want protectors. They want people protecting them. But she's the type of person where she's like, I can take care of myself. I'm self-sufficient. I want to be able to fight for others. You know, I want to be the one to help fight for others, to help save others. So I understand where she's coming from. Like, she very much reminded me a bit of myself, you know. Like, I try not to self-insert, but I was like, I understand her reasoning of why she is the way she is, you know. Like, I could be like that too. I would want to be that type of person too, where it's like, you don't want others controlling your life, your destiny, you know, your journey through life. You know, you don't want people controlling you. So you want to go and form your own path. And I can understand exactly where she was coming from. So there was a scene in here where Ben was trying to protect her, and she felt like it was him, like, suppressing her, like not having her choose her own, you know, destiny kind of thing. And so that kind of annoyed her. And that was a bit of like a little complication with their relationship. But, you know, when you're with somebody, you want to feel free with them. You don't want to feel like that they control every aspect of your life, you know? So I understood where she was coming from, of why, you know, she felt like she was controlled, and she kind of had to be in that more, what she would say, transactional relationship, which a lot of these relationships end up starting out with when it comes to like this series. Is a lot of it tends to be transactional, but it ends up turning into love. Where with her marriage, he didn't give a shit about her. He just was using her as like a body, or like, oh, you need to look pretty for me. And I'm like, you know, I'm kind of like, no. I don't like that, where it's like, oh, you're going to be pretty on my arm, like a Barbie. And it's like, well, just get a fucking blow-up doll, dude. You know, there you go. You know, there you go. So yeah, for me, I don't like that. You know, I don't like that, where it's like the guy's only with you because you're pretty and because you have this, like, he thinks of you as like a fucking trophy. And it's like, no, not happening. Sorry. I'm like, no. So I can understand her, you know, of like, no, I'm not doing this shit anymore. I could understand completely her need to to be able to control, you know, the situation and all that stuff. I can understand her reasoning. So, you know, for her, getting in a relationship and all that stuff wasn't something that she was interested in. So for Ben was very patient with her. Very, very patient. You need that type of person for her. She needs someone who can, you know, kind of give her that freedom and also be very patient with her when it comes to, you know, her internal, you know, conflicts she's having with herself, you know. So my thoughts is another good installment from Claire Kent. I said you have two characters that are trying to be strong for the others around them, but you can see that after how many years they really needed something to help keep them from breaking down. Like, you know, like almost like, you know, like you're fighting a war. And after a while, your body, your mind, it starts to break down. You start breaking down because no one should be under that amount of stress, you know, constantly. Your body's constantly doing that fight or flight response. It's exhausting. Your body breaks down, and it's hard for you to decompress. You know, it takes a while. Especially, you know, toxic or abusive relationships. Those types of people are in like that fight or flight mode constantly. So when your body's in that fight or flight mode, it's hard to kind of like turn that off, you know, especially when you've been in that state for a while. So it's like, I could see these characters are like, they're exhausted. They've been fighting this fight of like fighting the you know, people trying to oppress them, fighting this, you know, fighting this government faction that shouldn't be in place, you know. Obviously this government faction's a little bit better than the other one they had before, but still it's like, still not good. Like it needs to be better. You need to have other people running the area better, you know, than how it is now, you know. A lot of people, like, you know, when somebody gets into some sense of like power, they get like drunk on it, you know, get drunk on that power, and they want to control other people. I can't, you know, like, in one way I understand why they would do that, you know, because like I said, it's like a drug. But for me, I could never do that. I could never be that type of person. This is why I would never get into politics, because there's a lot of scummy people in politics. A lot of scumbags on both sides. I don't care who you vote for. There's always somebody who has ulterior motives. That's why I hate groups. So I really liked how they were kind of like each other's rock, essentially. They were really looking for a sense of home, you know, peace. So they brought each other that peace, you know. Their connection, I thought, was really good, you know. And I said, Annabelle trusts Ben completely, so he is willing to give her more when she makes the first move sexually. Like, she's the one, like I said, she's the one that kind of like goes first when it comes to moving forward from that friendship they had with each other. Because years ago, he was more of like, he would sleep around with other girls and all that stuff, but it got to the point where he was like, he obviously was feeling more things for Annabelle, to where he's like, I can't sleep with these other women. You know, he's like, I just want her, you know? But he still didn't push her. He didn't pursue her. So he basically made it to where he's like, she'll have to pursue me, you know? I said, I truly feel like Ben would have silently waited for Annabelle forever if it meant staying by her side. I said, he was her rock, someone she can lean on when needed, and who taught her how to fight. Like I said, how to fight, how to fish, how to hunt. Good man. I said, I also, at the end of the book, I have to change that. I said had. At the end of the book, I cried because two of the characters, I'd say technically three. There was three characters that we already knew in the Kindle series that were in this one. And I was like, because we end up finding out Ben's parents are one of the couples in the Kindle series. I'm not gonna say who. I'm not gonna say who, but I'll say it's one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites. That's a clue. That's one of my favorites of the series. And I was so happy. Like, reading the ending, I was like, yay, we still see this couple. And, we know that they had how many children. And I was just so happy that, they were like these older people. They're like in their 60s and 70s. And they have children and grandchildren. And one has like they have one of the children had a child. So now they have their great grandparents. And I was just like, oh, I love that part. That part I really love. Like, I always, like, I'm not a really huge fan of, like, spin-offs where you see, like, the parents years later, and I end up not liking the parents, but this here, it's like, I was like, no, I love this. I love this, seeing the couple that's now older, and they're still together, and they still love each other. They still have this connection with each other, and they have, like, their children, and their children have children, and it was just like, aw. And then we saw another character that was in the Kindle series. I'll just say that. There's another character that shows up at the very end, and I was like, yay. I was happy. This series here is good. And then, like I said, her Kindle series, and then she has all the little offshoots that are kind of like connected with it, that I was like, yeah, I really, really, love this. I love that series. I love the Kindle series. I love this series. The series is good too. The first book definitely felt longer. This one here definitely felt shorter to me. And yeah, it's an interesting series. It's like, when you think about it, you're like, yeah, what would happen if, there ever was any kind of like natural disaster, an asteroid hits our planet, what do we do? Like, what do we do? How many people are going to die? What happens afterwards? All that stuff. It's all up in the air. But I really enjoy reading about post-apocalyptic dystopian. I like all that stuff. It's really interesting. Because I love seeing people's, like, seeing humans' responses to catastrophes and different things. You see what type of person this person truly is. Whether this person's a hero or this person's a villain. Because there's always one way. People can either be good people or bad people. And there's people who are bad people that try to pretend to be good. But when the shit hits the fan, you see their true character come out. That's what I like. I like characters being exposed. I want to see their true selves come out. Almost like, if you think of it in a religious aspect, right? You see the demons coming out, and like I said, I'm not a religious person, so I don't think about it in that way. But I truly think that there's people out there in the world that are true, what you'd say, angels. These are good people. They would never do anything bad because it's not their character. It's not, so they truly are angels, and like I said, I don't look at it in like, not an actual real angel thing, more of like metaphorical, whatever it is. And so I'm like, this person truly is a good person, and either how they're raised or whatever it is, their character, they truly are a good person. But you have these other people who are like opportunistic, that are not good people. They will try to pretend that they're a good person, but when shit hits the fan, things don't go right for them. Their true demon self comes out. The evil part of them comes out. And I have seen that with people. I truly have seen that with people. People have exposed themselves to me, where I'm like, yeah, this person is not a good person. Now, I don't know if life circumstances created that for them or if they were always that way, I don't know. But for me, this was an interesting book. I really enjoyed it, and I ended up giving it 5 stars because I really like Claire Kent, Noelle Adams, like, because she is the same author. I'll say, like, there are less books of hers with the Noelle Adams that, some of them are kind of like, okay. Some I really enjoy. But I'd say with Claire Kent, there's a lot more of her books on that side of it that I like more than like when she does Noelle Adams, even though I still like Noelle Adams. And I am still reading, one of her books right now. This one's called The Mistake by Noelle Adams. This is 5 Weddings and a Road Trip. So this is like a younger woman, older man. So it's an age gap. And I'm currently reading that one. And so far it's okay. I'm not sure if I don't think I would give it 5 stars. And then the other book I'm currently reading is Project Hail Mary. I haven't gone that far in this one. I'm on chapter 4. It's going to probably take me a little while to get through. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get through it at the end of this month. I think I probably will end up discussing this one more because I'm not going to do a review for June. I'm not doing anything for June or July or August. I may end up doing a post. I may post reviews on my community tab if anybody wants to, hear my thoughts. Either that, or after summer break, I may end up like talking about this one. We'll see. But so far, I don't mind it. The sciencey stuff is kind of like, because I'm really bad at science. I'm really bad at science. So the sciencey stuff is really, it can be a little complex, of me understanding it. But I'd say I like the character. I like his character, Ryland Grace. He seems more of a regular, normal guy. He doesn't seem like he's a stuck-up dude. Like some people in the science field can kind of act like, oh, I'm better than you. And it's like, yeah. Some of those people can be kind of stuck up, and they try to act like they're so smart and superior. I hate that. I'm not a big fan of like some of the people who are famous, the science people that are famous. Like, I never liked Bill Nye. Never liked that guy. Never liked him growing up. Bill Nye, the science guy. I've always hated him. I've always hated that guy. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson, not a fan of him either. He comes off as pompous. And it's like, fuck you. I can't stand him either. I hate those sciencey guys that always come off like they're so superior than everyone else. And it's like, oh, really? Okay. So with this one here with Ryland, he doesn't come off as superior. And I actually like where there's a part in the book where he talked about how he had this theory of when it came to like life, and things like that. Living things. That it wasn't just everything has to be through water. Like he thinks there's other things too. And the other science field is like, oh, well, it's only this way. And it's like, how do you know? Science is about learning new discoveries. So whatever your theory was 50 years ago can be completely different now because you're all going based on theories. Most of it's theories, things like that. As more things come up, more discoveries come up, then those theories can become facts, So with this here, you're dealing with like the sun is getting some of its energy kind of siphoned. And so they're like, why is the sun getting siphoned? What's causing this? Is it a natural thing? Is it something else? So Ryland, because he wrote this fuck you letter to the science community and he decided to become a science teacher, his theory, his report he did, based on his findings and stuff, he's now going to be used for this project, Project Hail Mary, where they're trying to figure out what's causing the sun to have this issue to where it's going to kill the planet. It's going to kill Earth. Earth is going to die. And so now they're trying to figure out what's causing this. And so now him and other people have to go up in space to see what the issue is. So it opens where he has no memory of, like, he wakes up and he has no memory of who he is. He doesn't know why he's there. So it's an interesting thing because we're discovering who he is as he's discovering who he is. It's an interesting book so far, you know. Like I said, I'm about chapter 4, where he now has his memories back of, like, he knows he was a science teacher. He knows his name, things like that, you know. And I'd say the way it writes, it's mostly explainable. Like you can like, okay, I understand what's going on. But like I said, when the character's in his head and he's going through like these science things, I'm kind of like, you know, because I just talk to me in dummy terms, you know, because I'm an idiot when it comes to science. You know, I'm really stupid when it comes to science. Science is definitely not my strong suit. So when people start talking about like space and black holes and all this other stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I don't understand, you know, I don't understand all this stuff. So to me, it's just very, you gotta be like, talk to me in dummy terms, you know, for me to understand it. So yeah, it's because I am physically reading it, it's going to take me a little while. And then I kind of take breaks from it a little bit, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to take a break, maybe not read it for a few days, and then I'll go back to it, you know? So like I said, it's going to take me a little while for me to get through it. But I will say so far, I do like his character. I like his character. I think he's funny. And I like his whole fuck you to the science community, because I'm like, yeah, I can understand where he's coming from. So, anyways, I ended up watching more stuff this month that are all like Asian dramas or things like that, fantasy, stuff like that. So I ended up watching this one called Genie Make a Wish on Netflix. This one was freaking weird. This one was so weird. So I'll go over the synopsis of this one so you can understand it, because I don't think I can explain it right. So a genie named Iblis is freed from his lamp after 983 years. He was imprisoned as a result of the actions of a woman named Kai Young in a past life. So Kai Young has been a psychopath from birth. And that's what basically throughout the whole series they're saying this, is that she's a psychopath. Basically, she lacks a lot of empathy. And so this, as the series progresses, you know, you could see that the people, her village, tried to teach her empathy, because otherwise she'd probably be like a serial killer. You know, she has no feeling, you know, love, things like that. She has no type of empathy. So, you know, she comes across this genie, and then you end up finding out that there's like storylines in here of like reincarnation. There's also like religious aspects to this, because you will have an angel of death in here. He's definitely the angel of death. And Iblis is essentially a god, or he was a god. You know, he essentially was like what they would call, like, in a sense, the devil. If you're going based on like biblical, you know, stuff like the Bible, you would say that Iblis was probably more of the devil that was cast down from heaven, because he ended up in like the underworld area. And so his character did not want to basically be almost like a servant to humans. He didn't think of them as worthy, you know, because he's like, oh, they're made of clay, you know, these people that are made of clay, you know. And so Kai Young was almost, in a way, like different. She was a bit different than other humans. Like Iblis picked up on this with her, that she seemed different to him. So when she meets Iblis, both of their lives are changed forever. Iblis has been looking for Kai Young's soul to reincarnate. He's eager to wreak vengeance on her for unintentionally imprisoning him. So Iblis grants Kai Young 3 wishes, and their journey is filled with both conflict and comedy. And yeah, he very much, his character was really silly because he would try to intimidate her and she was like, oh yeah, kind of thing. And he was like, oh, like it kind of like jumped back from her. So she intimidated the fuck out of him, So it was an interesting series. Like, I think I ended up giving it like a 6 or a 7 out of 10. There were things in it that was kind of like, kind of weird. But it was interesting because the more that he tries to get to corrupt her, the more he ends up like falling for her. And then there's also like the there's a storyline aspect in here where there's a bit of like amnesia in here, where he didn't realize that he knew her in a former life as an adult. He only knew her as a child. He only had memories of her when she was a child, where he went and tried corrupting her then. And the more that she's around him, the more he's like, he starts to have feelings, and starts to feel for her. And they start falling for each other. But with her, it's like, because she's considered what they say, a psychopath, she lacks a lot of empathy. So she very much wants to feel. She wants to feel things. She wants to cry. She wants to, have emotions. And she really doesn't have these emotions. So it was an interesting series. I'll give it that. It was very interesting. Wouldn't be something I would rewatch again, but it was really interesting. Because like I said, it tackles like religion without going into like the Bible, But there's definitely like I would say there's other like mythologies, other myths and stuff like that were a part of this series, and stuff like that. But it was interesting. It was an interesting series. I'll give it that. And the next one I didn't finish this one, but I finished most of it. It was only like a 7-episode limited series where it had to do with teenagers. This one was called Adult Trainee. And there was like 3 different storylines involved with this series. Like the first 2 episodes had this first interaction with these teens where this boy, he, let me see. I wrote it down. Where was it? Come on. Yeah. There was 3 different coming of age stories in here. So the first story has a guy named Jimin. He's a teenager addicted to spicy content, if you know what I mean, spicy content, He plays with himself every night to the spicy content. So he's a serial, masturbator, or I'll say a serial masturbator was caught on camera. Or I guess you'd say gooner is like the newest term now, a serial gooner. He was caught, this one person was caught on camera playing with himself at school. And so they were trying to catch this person. And so he ended up getting caught on camera, and all you see is like the back of him like flogging himself. And so the kids at school are like, ew, why would you do that at school? And so the guy, Jimin, starts to have feelings for this girl who's a classmate of his. And the girl ends up saying like, ew, you're basically an animal if you do that, like you're just gross. And so he sees that as like a slight to him. And he's like, I need to stop gooning, So he essentially puts himself like in an AA for gooning, and ends up discovering this secret society area that are for these guys that are all stopping themselves from gooning. And they think that if they stop themselves from playing with themselves, that they're going to have like a better eyesight and different things like that, like all these like myths behind like, if you keep doing it, you're going to have hairy palms or whatever the myths are, to stop playing with yourself. Essentially, what I will say is men who constantly goon, what happens is when you do decide to get with a real woman, the woman is not going to be, that sensation is not going to be the same, because you've essentially desensitized yourself by, you know, using your hand on your body part, and you took away that sensitivity, you know, because you're probably doing it more rougher or harder, you know, kind of thing, gripping it tighter. And so you're essentially desensitizing yourself. They say the same thing for women. Like if women use like mechanical things, you know, toys and different things like that, that they could essentially desensitize themselves to that stuff. So this is why I would say, like, yeah, you can play with yourself, but maybe don't do it all the time. And then don't do it to, like, you know, adult entertainment, spicy entertainment. Maybe don't do that, you know? So slow it down a little bit. So he essentially went like how many days without gooning. And they were also like trying to figure out who this person was who was doing it in the school, you know, and getting caught. So that was the first story. And then he, like I said, he had a crush on the girl and everything like that. And so the second story had it to where it was Yura is upset when she sees her friend dating her ex-boyfriend. In order to look like that she's over her ex, she asks her male friend, Namho, to pretend to date her, and they pretend to date. You know, like they've been friends for years. So the more they pretend, the more Yura realizes that she's attracted to Namho. And so I said, I really enjoyed this one. I said, you could see the awkwardness of the characters and how shy they were when it came to dating. And with her, she was kind of, she thought of Namho as more of like her friend, her annoying friend. But the more she spent time with him, the more she's like, he's actually really good looking. He's good looking. He's, you know, he's her best friend, you know, like they have this connection with each other. And so she's like, why wouldn't I fall for him, kind of thing. So she ends up like falling for him, and you end up finding out that he's had feelings for her for years, you know. It was sweet. It was a cute little sweet like romance with these two teens and stuff like that. And yeah, it's like definitely more, I'd say, targeted towards teenagers and stuff like that, you know, because I'm older, you know, everything. So I'd say it's targeted more toward, I'd say teenagers should watch this show, you know, and it's coming of age and discovering yourself, and maybe you shouldn't discover yourself too much in a bathroom, that type of thing, or in your room, maybe not do it every night, you know, kind of thing. And also, you know, if this person is not interested in you that way, don't get offended, you know, like you could still be friends with this person, you know. And that's what it was with the first story. Like he had told her like he wanted to date her, the girl I had a crush on, and she was like, well, I don't want to date right now. She's like, I want to go and get my education and get my schooling. But she's like, maybe when we go to college and we go to the same college, we could start dating. And I was like, that makes sense, girl. You know, I was like, that's smart. That's smart. I was like, good for her. So I thought it was cute. I thought it was cute. I think I ended up giving it like a, and like I said, I didn't finish it because there was like, shit. There was one more story. There was one more story with that one where I think it had to do with a girl that was chubby. And I was like, I was paying for the service, or I'd say I was doing this one service that's attached to Amazon where it was like an Asian, you watch a lot of Asian dramas and stuff like that with it. But I was getting a free, I was getting like the 7-day free trial, and I did not want to pay for it. So I was like, well, I'm not really interested in the last storyline of that. So I just was like, I'll just skip it. So I never finished off the series. I think I only had 2 episodes to go, and I was like, I'm okay. You know, maybe eventually it'll end up going to like another platform that I could check it out, you know. I need to go in. My daughter has a whole bunch of stuff. I knocked this thing over. Has a whole bunch of stuff on her desk, and I have to, she's not a good organizer, so I have to organize it and get it, like, not be a pig pen. So for that one there, it was interesting. It was an interesting series, but like I said, it was a very short series. So the next one that I ended up watching is Business Proposal. This one's on Netflix. And I'll say the actor, the male actor, he is so cute. He is so cute. I liked him. Let me find it. Business Proposal. This one here is has Kang Tai-moo. So his first name is Tai-moo. His last name is Kang. But like I said, they always go with the last name first. So Kang Tai-moo and Shin Ha-ri. And a lot of times it sounded like they were saying Harry. But it wasn't the... This one here had it to where it was English dubbed. So sometimes it sounded like the person was saying Hari, and other times it sounded like they were saying Harry, you know? Because it's HA/RI, you know? So Kang Tai-moo's grandfather, who raised him when his parents were killed in a car accident, wants Tai-moo to settle down, get married, and have children. The grandfather decides to set up blind dates with influential families' daughters. One of the daughters, Young So, is friends with Shin Ha-ri. Ha-ri is a food researcher who works for GoFood, and Tai-moo is the president of the company. So Shin Ha-ri gets asked by Young So to play her on the blind date. Basically be her friend, you know, pretend to be her friend. And of course to act silly, so these blind dates leave Young So alone, and it will get her father to stop harassing her about marriage. So Shin Ha-ri gets nicely dressed up with makeup and a wig, and she ends up making a fool of herself on the date. I said these parts were cringe, and I had secondhand embarrassment when she would be like acting really silly. That part was like, the beginning part of the series, I was like, this is really cringe. This is really like, I was getting secondhand embarrassment. So Tai-moo isn't deterred by this and decides to ask out Young, you know, again, which it obviously is Ha-ri. So when he keeps getting rejected, he finds out the truth that he didn't go on a date with. That he didn't go on a date with that Young So. He ends up finding out that he went on a date with Shin, but she ends up lying to him again about her name. She ends up telling him her name is like Shin Gairi or something like that, when her name is like, you know, Shin Ha-ri. So he decides to hire her as his fake girlfriend, so it keeps his grandfather off of his back. This is while they hang out. Tai-moo starts to develop feelings for Shin. I said, still not knowing her true identity or the fact that she works for his business. So I said, my thoughts were, the beginning of the series was super silly and cringe. The antics between Ha-ri and Young So just annoyed me. But as the episodes went by, the show got better for me. I said, I also found it silly that several times Ha-ri bumped into Tai-moo at work and he didn't recognize her, which was absolutely ridiculous. Because even with the makeup and wigs, you could tell that Ha-ri and the alias she was portraying looked exactly the same, even with glasses on. I said there was a scene where she had to present a proposal, so she wore like one of those masks right here. And that was like more convincible that he didn't recognize her, because it's like she's wearing a mask and she's wearing glasses. So yeah, he's not recognizing her there. But there was other scenes where I was like, how do you not recognize her, man? You know, how do you not recognize her? I said also, I said the other thing that annoyed me was her friends from school that weren't really her friends. They didn't think she was good enough to date Kang Tai-moo, and they would talk about Ha-ri behind her back. Her only true friend was Young So. I said also for years she had a crush on this guy from college, Min Woo, and he seemed to have liked her as well, but he kept dating his on-again, off-again girlfriend. And when Min Woo heard that Ha-ri had a boyfriend, then he started to get jealous, which was ridiculous, because why keep your female friend in the friend zone for years if you like her. It just made no sense. I was like, dude, why, if you are attracted to her, why did you want to keep dating this other woman for years on again, off again? Why did you do that when you had Hari the whole time that you could have dated? She was your friend. She was loyal to you. She was a good person. So why would you keep her on the line? You know, it made no sense. I was like, dude, you fucked up. You kept her, you know, hanging, and someone else was like, hey, you're just going to let her be there? I'm going to take her, you know, kind of thing, you know? I said, at least with Temu, once he realized he really liked Hari, he started pursuing her. So I ended up giving the show a 7 out of 10. And like I said, the beginning part was just silly to me. Where I was like, this is just kind of weird. You know, like I said, the antics that she did was really silly. And I was like, girl, you're not acting like a mature adult here, you know? She was very much acting immature. Her and the Young So, it's SEO, Young So. And so the more the series had progressed with the episodes, the better it got for me, where I was like, oh, okay, I like her a little bit more. And so, yeah, I ended up enjoying the series toward the end of it and everything. And right now I'm currently watching, I haven't finished it yet, but I'm, I'd say, mostly through it. I'll probably talk about it at the end of the month in my wrap-up. But I'm watching Love in the Clouds. And this one here, this is another one on Netflix. This is more fantasy-based, where this female, she disguised herself as a male for many years to go and fight in these competitions and all that stuff. And I think if you win the competition, you end up getting this like mystic rain or some type of like rain that comes down on your village or your town or whatever it is, and it brings, I don't know, some type of like good stuff to you. That's still kind of like unclear to me. It's kind of a little confusing. But she was basically disguising herself as a male for how many years to fight in these competitions. And she ends up fighting against this one male, which I can't remember their names now. Now the names are kind of like out of my head. But once I'm watching the show, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. His name is this, her name is this. Now I'm like, God, I can't remember. Where is it? I know I wrote it down. Here we go. Love in the Clouds. Yeah, her name is Ming Yi, but the male counterpart of her, like the one that she was portraying, 'cause she had like these powers she would use to make herself look male. It was Ming Xian was the male disguise. Yeah, his name is Jai Bonsai. And so she's been disguising herself the whole time. So her, as the male character, as the male version, her disguise, she fights against Jai Bonsai, and he ends up winning. And she ends up getting poisoned by this heavenly grief. That's what it's called, heavenly grief. And she has this flower essentially on her hand, her forearm, where it's called spiritual veins, which give you like this power. And if you're born with these spiritual veins, you have like more of these powers of, you know, fighting and different things like that and all that stuff. You have healing power, things like that. So she ends up getting her spiritual vein ends up getting affected by this heavenly grief, and so she doesn't find a cure for it. She could die. So she ends up disguising herself again, and this time as a dancer at this place called Moonlit Blossoms, and there she meets again with Jai Bonsai, but he doesn't recognize her, you know, as her, you know, what she normally looks like, a female. And so she ends up like throwing herself at him to kind of get him to like take her back to his place and all that stuff. And so he ends up like, he doesn't like, he knows that she has like ulterior motives. Like he could tell, like, you know, like, you don't just like me, come on. So he's not stupid. But he ends up taking her back anyway, because he kind of like is using her to kind of get like, he keeps having women kind of thrown at him. And so he kind of really doesn't want these women around him. So he ends up using her as like, oh no, this is my lady kind of thing, you know? And so he ends up taking her back to where he lives, and they start to kind of like get close to each other and start falling for each other. So it's essentially like, you know, he's fallen in love with her, you know, ends up falling in love with her. And so he, of course, is going to end up finding out her, you know, that she lied to him, and he's going to be heartbroken by it, you know, which I've kind of gotten to that part, you know, where he kind of like felt betrayed. And so it's an interesting series, like, because you're finding out more of like, he was essentially used as a slave for these mining, what I would say was a mining area, where they're using these creatures that kind of like take over somebody's body, and they're using them to raise up like almost like this army. And so they're essentially using humans as the food. So they're throwing these people into these like this pit area that is being used to bring up these creatures that essentially could overtake, you know, the throne or whatever it is, you know, overtake it. So essentially people are trying to do evil things, and they're harming innocent people. And so he's trying to stop it from happening. And so she decides to work with him. They're going to work together to try to stop these bad people from harming innocent people and doing all this other stuff. And it's an interesting series. And that's basically what, from the gist of what I get from it. Because the beginning part was confusing, and I'm like, I'm so confused. So, but the more I'm watching the episodes, the more I'm like, okay, I think I'm understanding this a little bit more, you know. And like I said, I can't remember the name of these things. I may have to write them down. But she's looking for this thing that's called Golden Millet Dream, which will essentially heal her. So it's basically an antidote. Or I think what the stuff is, Golden Millet Dream, if you come across it, it could give you powers. It could give you spiritual veins, you know? So you either want to obtain that because you want to be, you know, more of almost like a god in that sense. You either want to obtain that and become that, or it's, if you already have it, it's used as a healing to heal you. So it's interesting, and I'll have to write down, like, I can't remember the name of like these beasts, these things that are kind of like, it looks like a mist, and it'll kind of like overtake you and choke you and kind of like, you know. And the people that are basically being sacrificed, their souls, their essence is being like bound in like this tree and all that stuff. So I don't want to give away too much, but essentially their souls are not free, they're trapped. And so now they're like, hey, how do we free these souls so that way they can, you know, obviously go into like the afterlife or whatever it is, you know, whatever the afterlife is, you know. So it's an interesting series. But like I said, the first part of it was like confusing to me, and I had to like keep watching it as it went along, where I was like, okay, I'm understanding it a little bit more. And so yeah, you got like really bad people who are doing bad things. He used to be a prisoner. Jai Bozai used to be a prisoner, and he saw a lot of death and a lot of different things like that. So he basically is trying to dismantle this whole thing. And so she decides to work with him to try to dismantle it too, because she's like, that's, you know, she doesn't like that either, you know. She doesn't think it's right either. So she's essentially working with him now. They're working as partners, where before she was like, you know, just trying to use him to get like, you know, see if he had that antidote for her. And so the more they were around each other, the more she's discovering different things and discovering like there's some bad people that are working, you know, to take down basically like the prince and the princess and different things like that. You know, all this different like royalty factions and stuff like that. Interesting series. Like I said, it is a very interesting series. And the more I watch it, the more I'm like, okay, I can understand this a little bit more. But I don't want to delve in too much of it, and then I'm telling you all the spoilers and everything like that. But I'll just say, like, there's evil people trying to take over, you know, this area, and you have people like Jibozai, who is trying to dismantle this whole thing, and also kind of get vengeance for his master, the person who saved him and gave him, like, probably gave him those powers that he has. He's trying to basically get vengeance for her because she was essentially killed, and her soul was obviously like consumed by these creatures, these beasts and stuff like that. Like I said, I can't remember the name of them. I'll have to write it down. But yeah, it's an interesting series. But anyways, that's what I've been enjoying so far this month. I'm going to continue on watching Love in the Clouds and then get through that one. And when I'm done with that, I'll delve into some other stuff. But there's a lot of like Asian dramas or Asian, like there's thrillers I want to check out from them. There's this one series that's like a thriller that looked really interesting, and I don't think it's that long. Some series only have like 12 episodes, and then you have some series that are like longer. Usually the ones that are by Netflix, that Netflix created, the series is only maybe like 12 episodes or 16 episodes, and that's pretty much it. Where there's some of the other ones, like this one here that I'm watching, I think it goes to like either 32 or 34 episodes. There was another one I watched that had like 40 episodes to it. So it all depends on like who made it. Like if it comes from China, then obviously the Chinese production, you know, movie production and all that stuff, they created that. And I think I like those more because they're shorter. You know, they're easier to get through, and it doesn't take you like 15, 20 fucking seasons to get through a series, you know, where sometimes here I feel like some TV series go on way too long, and they needed to be wrapped up much quicker. But yeah, interesting so far. I am enjoying it. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much it. I've been enjoying most of what, you know, I've read this month, and been enjoying the TV series and all that stuff, and continuing to try to stay offline as much as I can. You know, like I don't get on YouTube much. I don't watch a lot of YouTube videos much. You know, I don't really do that. I have drama stuff I watch, but that's pretty much it. But I don't watch a lot of BookTube stuff anymore. I still kind of like sit there and I'll watch somebody's video, but sometimes I just don't comment, you know. But I'll sit there and listen to a video of like, if I'm doing something like washing my dishes or doing some other things like around my apartment or something like that, I'll listen to somebody's video of talking about books. But I don't really get like a ton of recommendations anymore from other booktubers that I used to. So, you know, I don't really watch a lot of booktube content anymore. A lot of what I watch is other stuff, you know, that interests me. You know, or, you know, watching stuff on Netflix and other networks and stuff like that. You know, other things that, you know, take up my time that I find more enjoyment in, you know. I was getting kind of bored with BookTube. And so I'm assuming, you know, it's going to hit my channel too, where people are bored, you know, they get bored with, you know, book content and all that stuff. So that's why I'm like, I wanted to add in, like, talk about shows that I'm watching too, you know, because you may watch the show or you may watch the show. You may have already watched it and you're like, oh yeah, I really like that one. You know, talk about other things besides books, because I get kind of bored just discussing books, you know. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it for this one here. I keep going on because this is already a long enough video that people probably won't even watch the whole way through. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this here. Let me know down below, have you read anything recently that you really enjoyed? Let me know in the comment section. Or have you watched anything recently that you've been really enjoying? I do want to watch the Off-Campus series that they're going to have on Prime Video that's based on the Elle Kennedy Off-Campus series, book series that she's done. But I'm going to wait till all the episodes come out. Because I think I think it might just be weekly episodes. And I just don't have the patience for that anymore. you know, to wait for weekly episodes. I'd rather be where I'm like, all the episodes come out and I binge watch it, you know. So that's basically what I'll end up doing. Is this month Off Campus is supposed to come on Prime Video. I'm going to wait till all the episodes come out and then I'll binge watch it then. Same thing with, like, there's another show that I want to watch that's called Perfect Crown. That's on Hulu. I want to wait till all the episodes come out before I binge watch that one. You know, I probably will watch that this month. I'm hoping to get to it. Once I'm done with Love in the Clouds, then I'll probably delve into Perfect Crown. And there's some other ones I want to check out. Some horror ones, like, that looked interesting, like zombies and stuff like that. So we'll see when I'm in the mood for those ones. We'll see. But yeah, and there's a couple of series that I tried to get into and I ended up, like, you know, going away from them because they were kind of boring me. So, but yeah, that's it for this video here. Let me know if there is anything that you've watched or listened to or read or whatever it is that you want me to know about. But yeah, that's it for this video. Have yourself a good day. Take care of yourselves, be kind to each other, and I'll see you all on the next video. All right, bye.